Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Onyx Fantasy. Win up to 325 times your entry with the new Pick 8. It's on the promo code SGPN to claim a special Pick 8 first and deposit offer of $2 in bonus cash on Onyx Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Build your own betting model using their AI betting engine. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Wednesday night, roughly 10:40 p.m. Eastern Time on July 10th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, but a bit of a shorter one. Only 2 matches to preview, and it is the women's semifinals preview episode. So we're going to cover the women's matches for Thursday. Then we're going to cover the men's matches for Friday tomorrow. So that's going to be the updated schedule. But for the actual recap portion of the episode, not going to cover the men's matches. We're going to recap the lock and dog picks, but we're going to save our actual recap and takeaway from the men's matches for the next episode, because I'll try to keep it correlated to the actual content. Instead, we're going to recap the actual women's quarterfinal matches that happened over the last 2 days, and that'll be the recap portion instead. So before we get into any of the actual preview of the semifinal matches on the women's side, I want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder, don't forget to rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple. I believe right now we are 3 subscribers short of 300. So if you could help out, I'd appreciate it. Think we're 3 away. So overall, it's been going up recently. Shout out to all of you who've been watching the Wimbledon episodes or listening to on Spotify or Apple. We have gotten good overall numbers from those episodes. So thank you for being a part of the show by listening to it. Also, a reminder, don't forget to check out the SGPN merch store, because we have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, and we have mugs. So if you do want to pick yourself something up, it's comfortable, recommend it. Have a couple of shirts and sweatshirts myself, and definitely have a lot of great options when it comes to colors as well. So once again, don't be afraid to check out the SGPN merch store, not just for our show, but also for the other shows with the network, because the featured show for the this week is actually the Propcast, which is hosted by Munaf, Manji, and Chris, and they get you ready for the NFL season on the Propcast. They have episodes dedicated to season-long props and the awards markets. So if you want, for example, some takeaways on the betting preview for the Comeback Player of the Year award, the Coach of the Year award, I know those episodes are already out, so check out the Propcast if you do want some early NFL award predictions and potentially finding yourself some gems in the betting markets. Also a reminder, don't forget to check out CJ Sullivan and his road to $10 million on the Bottom Line Bombs. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts, or you can tune in on the SGPN app. Anyway, time to start off with the actual recap of the men's quarterfinal episode picks, starting off with the lock. Unfortunately, similar story to the previous episode that we had, where we had a pretty good read on most of the matches. I'll save the breakdown of those, though, for next episode. However, we picked the wrong one for the lock. We had Fritz to win the first set and the match. Won the first set, and then he blew the match. It was minus 148. I think it closed on FanDuel at minus 176. I want to say Fritz alive after the first set was like minus 400, 500. Probably higher than that, actually. The point is, Fritz was up a set in the break, and then he forgot how to play tennis. Musetti made some adjustments. Fritz couldn't really counter it, and we ended up seeing Musetti win in 5, so picked up a loss there with the lock. For the dog, though, ended up winning, kinda. We got a reduced payout for the actual dog, so we ended up hitting a minus 160 on the dog. It was supposed to be plus 113 with Alcaraz over 3.5 sets, parlayed with Djokovic money line. Djokovic money line was a free parlay leg, because worst case scenario, de Minaur was going to withdraw from the event because of the injury, and he did. So we thought that was a possibility, but we were hoping he would suit up for a quarterfinal match, test it out, maybe play one set. But at no point were we concerned about Djokovic losing. And unfortunately for us, de Minaur was too injured to actually play. So either way, that ended up voiding. But Alcaraz and Paul did end up going to 4 sets. So picked up a win. But instead of plus 113, it was minus 160 with the Djokovic play getting voided. So anyway, decent episode. I'll recap those matches a bit more in detail in the next episode. For the actual quarterfinals, though, I'm going to recap the women's matches. So they had 2 matches like the men's on Tuesday and 2 matches on Wednesday. So starting off with the Tuesday matches, by the way, in general, the quarterfinal matches on the women's side kind of sucked. 3 of the 4 matches were very lopsided, but the best match was actually the first one between Sun and Vekic, 2 surprising long shots who actually made it to the quarters, and you ended up seeing Vekic lose the first set and then rally as she ended up winning that one in 3. Not the most competitive third set, though, as Vekic did end up winning the final set 6-1, but now she makes her first ever Grand Slam semi, so good for her. Sun made a great run as a qualifier, I believe, and eventually fell short. Had a good performance, though, against Raducanu. Made a name for herself, but unfortunately, Vekic had a bit too much firepower for her in the final 2 sets. Fun match nonetheless, and after that, it was all one-way traffic for the other 3 matches, because I would like to pretend that they were competitive, but they really weren't. The matches were kind of decided in the first 20, 30 minutes in the other 3 quarterfinal matchups. But the point is, going through those, Paolini absolutely demolished Navarro. Navarro pulled off an upset against Goff and then got destroyed. And the fun stat of the match, Navarro won a grand total of 0 second serve points. 0. If Navarro hit a second serve, she automatically lost the point. That's how that happened. So she ended up going 0 for 10 on second serve points, and Paolini dominated the actual match, winning 6-2, 6-1. It was a destruction. Paolini's had a great year. She made the finals in the French Open, both in singles and in doubles, and now she's back in the semis for Wimbledon, so good for her. Her best run at Wimbledon by a wide margin. Looking at the actual match, though, I believe it was originally tied 2-2, and it was. So Navarro actually led 2-1 with a break in the first set, and then Paolini ended up winning 11. She ended up winning like 11 of the last 12 games, which is absolutely wild. Point is, though, that was a complete destruction, and Paolini ended up just destroying her. So pretty underwhelming semifinal match there. Nothing else to really dive into. Paolini just dominated, especially with her footwork and her overall return game, and Navarro couldn't get anything going on her serve. For the 2 quarterfinal matches, on Wednesday, yeah, they both sucked too. The Ostapenko one was competitive, at least. It was a straight set win for Krejcikova, as she won 6-4, 7-6. But Krejcikova looked pretty comfortable for most of the way through. Ostapenko had a good run. Just seemed like Krejcikova was a bit more patient and was able to outlast Ostapenko in a couple of rallies, and we saw the unforced error count kind of go up there for Ostapenko. Good win, though, for Krejcikova. In general, she played well, and she won 81% of her first serve points, which was the shocking, I'd say, stat of the actual match. But looking at the actual breaks, she ended up forcing 8 break point chances, ended up converting on 3 of them. But match was competitive. Ostapenko, though, of course, mentally she can short circuit at times, but it just seemed like Krejcikova's first serve was too effective, and Ostapenko's return game couldn't really counter it, and that resulted in a nice competitive win for Krejcikova. And for the other matchup, you had Svitolina, who made a good run, ended up beating Jabeur, for example, so she had a good tournament, but then ended up getting destroyed by Rybakina. Rybakina, I think, is the only player we kind of expected to be here at this point, being a former Wimbledon champion, and now she has a great path to actually win the entire thing. We'll see if she does, but the point is Rybakina is the clear favorite to win the entire event at this point, and we'll see if she can win her second Wimbledon title. But Svitolina never really threatened, and it just felt like Rybakina was one step ahead for the entire matchup. So once again, you had basically 2 competitive matches, but only one of them went to 3 sets. So not exactly the most appealing set of quarterfinal matches. Hopefully the 2 semifinal matches on Thursday are going to be more competitive. Either way, though, that's going to wrap it up for the actual recap of the women's quarterfinal matchups in Wimbledon. Now it's time for the actual preview of the semifinal matches taking place on Thursday. Before into any of that, though, do want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because their Pick 8 is now live. Credentials up to 8 picks, and Underdog automatically double flex your entries. So it's 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make and extra ways to win, the excitement's higher than ever. Best part, you can now win up to 325 times the original amount. You can now use specials and boosts on all flexed entries. I can't wait to personally use my Pick 8 on Angel Reese rebounds every single time. On the higher, I mentioned it in the last episode, and I think her number was 12.5, and she had 13. So Angel Reese keeps going higher on her rebounds. And speaking of Underdog Fantasy, I know Terrell and I actually won our Underdog lineup at a plus 600 price for the last WNBA episode. So far, so good. Don't miss out on your chance before it's gone. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to come for special for any first time deposit offer up to $2 bonus cash. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million of guaranteed prizes. And of course, Circa contests have no rake. Circa Millions, pick 5 NFL teams ATS each week and compete for $6 million or survive the Neville Gauntlet to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com to save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Don't have a trip booked yet for Las Vegas before football? Ultimate Contest Weekend's a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the world's best sports book from August 22nd through the 24th. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the quarterfinal matchups on the women's side. Now it's time for the preview of the semifinal matchups on Thursday. Starting off with the first match on the card, you have a matchup which should be, I'd say, interesting, hopefully, because the head-to-head's actually been competitive between these two. Point is, though, you have Vekic taking on Paolini. Now, Paolini is 2-1 in the head-to-head. Only one recent meeting, faced off 2 times in 2021. Which they ended up splitting, but they faced off last year in Montreal, and Paolini did win that one 7-6, 6-2. For the actual money line, Paolini's favored, but not by an insane amount. She's around minus 162. Saw minus 180, though, in a couple other books. Vekic is a plus 142. For the spread, you have minus 2.5 for Paolini. You have plus 2.5 for Vekic. Over-under set at 22 or 21.5 if you shop around. You can find the set spread at minus 1.5 for Paolini at plus 145. Vekic to win a set is minus 175, and the over 2.5 sets is plus 135. Now, I have to mention the actual path of both players because Vekic was the surprise, I'd say, one of the Cinderella runs that we've had so far, as she was in the Sabalenka quarter and got a gift because Sabalenka ended up not participating in the event. She has been good head-to-head, though, against Sabalenka, so maybe she would have been able to pull off an upset, but the point is Vekic was given a very open quarter, especially with Zhang losing immediately in the first round to Sun and with Sabalenka withdrawing. So Vekic got the, I'd say, reward of having a pretty easy quarter based on the draw, and it worked out to her advantage, getting to take on a qualifier in the quarterfinals. Now, Paolini was not exactly known for grass prowess, but she had been playing relatively well in the grass events leading up to it. She had won a couple of matches, I believe, in Eastbourne, even beat Bolter in the process. But the point is, I do think Paolini is in better form, even though they're both in the semis. Paolini's only dropped one set in the entire event, and she probably should have lost to Madison Keys before Keys did get injured and blew a 5-2 lead, I believe, in the third set. Point is, though, for the most part, she's coasted, beat Navarro and only dropped 3 games, beat Andreescu in straight sets, ended up winning, once again, every single match in straight sets that was completed because the Keys match ended early because of retirement, but ended up beating Minen in straight sets and beat Torres in straight sets. Point is, she's been in great form, and after watching her dismantle Navarro like it was nothing, I think that she should be a bigger favorite in this matchup. Now, Vekic has been good, as of course she did make it to the semis, but there has been one common theme. All of her matches have been marathons, or at least most of them, with the exception of the Andreeva match. Beat Sun in 3, beat Badoza in 3, beat Yastremska in 3, beat Andreeva in straight sets, and beat Wang in 3 sets, and also ended up losing to Schneider in Hamburg in 3 sets as well. So a lot of matches recently have been marathons for Vekic, and even though there was a day off before this matchup for her, I am concerned about fatigue. When you play that many sets and now you're against Paolini, who's been coasting for the most part for the entire tournament, I do have some concerns if it turns into a marathon again, if maybe Paolini will have a bit more in the gas tank, which can be an issue for Vekic. But simply put, I think Paolini's the better player. I think Vekic can have some nerve issues because this is going to be the biggest match she's ever played. She made a couple of quarterfinals before in Grand Slams, but now she's officially in her first ever semi. It can be a bad spot nerves-wise, potentially. And I think Paolini, who made the French Open final a couple of weeks, if not a month ago or so, I think she'll be ready for the moment, and she has looked very good on grass. So I'll go with Paolini in this one. I'll lay the games. I think that Vekic maybe can win a set, but in reality, I think Paolini is just too solid, and I do think that her overall consistency will eventually force some unforced errors from Vekic. Vekic does have some firepower, so I do think if you want to go for the aces market, maybe minus 2.5 aces in favor of Vekic is worth a look. But in reality, I think Paolini is just going to be able to threaten too often in the Vekic return games, and I do think Paolini is too rock solid with her actual strokes to I'd say lose this match, in my opinion. I think Vekic can hang in there, maybe win a set, but I think Paolini will eventually force out enough unforced errors to win the match. So give me Paolini to make it to her second straight Grand Slam final. Moving on to the second matchup, in my opinion, the better one, at least on paper. You have Rybakina taking on Krejcikova. Now, Rybakina is a decent favorite here, about minus 450. Krejcikova's plus 360. For the actual game spread, you have minus 4.5 for Rybakina, plus 4.5 for Krejcikova. Over-under set at 21.5. For the set spread, you have Rybakina minus 1.5 sets at minus 145, and you have Krejcikova plus 1.5 sets at plus 115. Now, Rybakina has been coasting for the most part, with the exception of one match in the event relatively early on, but she has looked really good as the event has gone on, and she was fortunate that she was going to win the match anyway, but she was able to have one match cut short with a retirement. But she dropped the set in the second round to Sigmund. That was it. She ended up beating everybody else, so in straight sets pretty comfortably. In fact, she has not dropped more than she's not dropped more than 3 games in a set in each of her last 5 sets. So she's been coasting. Krejcikova, though, has been good too. And I feel like she's an extremely volatile player where either she'll make a very deep Grand Slam run or she'll lose immediately. And that kind of seems to be the story of her career. And this time we have caught her on a positive swing as she's been phenomenal. And in singles, she ended up dropping a set to Kudermetova, and she's not dropped a set since. Ended up winning every other set. Had a couple breakers, though, so there have been some competitive matches in there. But I do think, based on the actual matchup itself, should be a good one. Now, 450, I understand, because Rybakina is a former champion, and she's a top 4 player in the world easily. However, I have to at least mention that Krejcikova is up 2-0 in the head-to-head. Now, they faced off in 2021, and they faced off in 2022, so a bit dated. Both matches did go to 3 sets, and Krejcikova did win both of them. Last meeting was in Ostrava. Both were on hard court, and she ended up winning after losing the first set in both matches, actually. Something to keep in mind. For this matchup, though, do I think Rybakina is going to win? Probably. However, do I think 450 is a bit disrespectful? I do. I think that if you want to make the argument about head-to-head matches, if you want to make the argument about actual form recently, Krejcikova's been good. Like, I'm not going to dismiss her and just say that Rybakina is going to just destroy her. I think Krejcikova can hang in there. She served well in the tournament. I mentioned before she won 81% of her first serve points against Ostapenko. Beating Ostapenko in straight sets on grass, impressive. Beat Collins in straight sets. She's been in good form this year. She's been good. I think 450 is a bit disrespectful. Now, if I had to compare it, I'd probably compare it to like the Alcaraz and Paul match, where I thought Alcaraz would win, but I thought Paul would be able to win a set. I thought that Paul would be able to make the match competitive based on the head-to-head and just based on the form that we've seen. But I know Rybakina has been great. I get it. But I do think based on the head-to-head and based on Krejcikova's form as well, and also Rybakina's tendency to struggle to actually win big matches since she won Wimbledon a couple of years ago, she has found moments to fall apart. And I do think that Krejcikova can make it interesting. So I'm actually going to link to the dog here, at least based on the value. Now, if Rybakina wins comfortably, would I be shocked? Of course not. I mean, Rybakina's a better player. But I do think, looking at the actual price, 450 for a player that you're 0-2 against lifetime, I think that line's big. I think Rybakina should be favored by a decent margin, but like 350 maybe, 375. 450 I think is too large, so I'm actually going to lean to Krejcikova in this one. I'll link to the games at 4.5. I don't mind Rybakina team total over at 12.5. A couple ways to get there. We have seen Krejcikova go to a decent amount of 7-5 or 7-6 sets. In fact, each of her first 5 sets in the event ended up going to either 7-5 or 7-6. So with that being the case, I could see a breaker here. I could see a 7-5. I don't mind Rybakina team total over. I think that this match should be more competitive than the odds maker suggests. Do I think Krejcikova is going to win? No. Can she win a set? Sure. I'm not going to dismiss her, but I do think that Rybakina is going to win in what I think will be an underratedly competitive match. And I think that at the end of the day, you will be getting a match between Paolini and Rybakina in the final. Anyway, nothing really else to add. I warned you all before it'd be a short episode because we only have 2 matches to preview. But point is, that's going to wrap it up for the actual semifinal preview. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks for the 2 matches. But before we get into that, do want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm is a great place to help you with your player props, because Rhythm is the go-to sports betting tool that transports complex data into actionable insights, empowering bettors with smarter, data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easier and more enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants over 3 years of data to help drive you to better AI-backed betting decisions. Rhythm's projections have been red hot for WNBA and golf. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampodcast.com. sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the 2 semifinal matchups in Wimbledon on the women's side. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Starting off with the lock, I am going to go with 1 play in each match, by the way. So I'm going to try to spread the wealth. For the lock, I am going to go back to the Paolini match, and I am going to go with the spread here. Give me Paolini minus 2.5 games at minus 118. Biggest match of Bekic's career. We saw nerves be a bit of a factor early in her match against Sun, and Paolini, I do think, is the better overall player. She's 2-1 in the head-to-head. She won the most recent meeting in straight sets. Maybe you get 1 competitive set, but I do think that Vekic with the nerves might come out a bit slow. And I do think, with that being the case, Paolini should look comfortable. She's been great on grass, only dropping 1 set in the entire event. She made a French Open final. recently, so nerves should not be an issue for her. And Vekic has been involved in a bunch of marathons, and fatigue could be an issue as she has gone to 3 sets in 5 of her last 6 matches. That's every match in Wimbledon except one and the last match in Hamburg. So fatigue could be an issue, and Paolini only dropped 1 set, which was the keys. She's won every other match in straight sets. So I do think the stamina edge should go to Paolini if this turns into a marathon. But I think Paolini is in better form. I think that she's the better player. And the fact that she has covered the spread in 2 of the 3 head-to-head meetings, including the recent one in Canada last year in straight sets, I do think is telling to me that the spread might be a bit too low. Give me Paolini, who I think is a very solid player who's having a career year, to get the job done once again at -2.5 at -118 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to the Rybakina and the Krejcikova match. And for this one, I am going to go with a player prop. I'm going to go with a breaks of serve prop, actually. I'm going to go with Krejcikova. I'm going to take Krejcikova over 1.5 breaks at +110. Couple reasons why I'm going to go with this one. First reason, I'm trying to remember what book this was on, by the way. This was on, I want to say DraftKings. I think DraftKings had the +110. Krejcikova, though, has recorded at least 2 breaks in 8 of her 9 grass matches on the season. So Krejcikova has been a solid returner so far in this event. I think she has actually cashed this in every single match of Wimbledon. And Krejcikova has recorded at least 2 breaks in each of the first 2 head-to-head meetings. Rybakina has been fine serving, but even in the lopsided matches, she actually has been broken at least once in a decent amount of those. So with Rybakina is getting broken against weaker competition at least once in most of these, I do think that Krejcikova, with her overall talent and her success, historically speaking, against Rybakina, I think she can generate a couple breaks here. And I do think, I mean, if we're being honest, women's tennis is not exactly known for being a great tour for holding serve. And I do think that you're going to constantly see a bunch of opportunities in women's tennis in general for breaks. And if Rybakina's first serve percentage does drop, I do think Krejcikova can capitalize on the second serve, and I do think that she'll be aggressive enough to potentially go for it with some chances. But 1.5 breaks in a women's tennis match that I think is going to be competitive, I think is a pretty good deal at plus money, especially when she has gone over this number in both head-to-head meetings. So for me, I'm going to go with the over breaks prop as my dog. So once again, my picks for the women's semifinal matches in Wimbledon for Thursday, the lock's going to be on Paolini -2.5 games at -118. And my dog will be on Krejcikova over 1.5 breaks at +110. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. A reminder, next episode will be the men's semifinal preview. So keep that in mind. That will be recorded on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Red Show Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the WNBA show. Find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.